All right. Let's get into today's show. So we're going to kick off the show with something I guess pretty serious. So those who have been listening for a long time, following us for a long time, will remember the story that we broke in the middle of the Tour de France this summer about carbon monoxide and its use within the pro peloton. As a very brief reminder of that, sort of one legitimate use of carbon monoxide in the pro peloton, which is you could use it to test blood volume. This is a test that's been around for a very long time. It's been used in sort of medical settings and physiology and all the rest for a while. It is not in and of itself dangerous, but it uses the same machine, the same tool. That is, there's been some research into whether essentially a higher dosage of the same and higher frequency of the same basically inhalation of carbon monoxide, which I'll remind you is a gas that will kill you, can create an effect not dissimilar to going to altitude. Is that a decent enough summation, Ronan?
I think we need to be a little bit clearer, because some of this seems to have got lost in the weeds. Not on the explanation you've just given, but just quite often when people ask me about carbon monoxide, or when carbon monoxide comes up in conversation, the thing that I hear back is, but it's fine, it's used as a measurement, it's a perfectly valid medical test that anybody could have done when they go to hospital. And that is true. That is accurate. And when done correctly and used specifically for measurement purposes, it is fine. And that most often happens in professional cycling when teams go to altitude training camps, and they'll do that specific test on day one of the altitude training camp, and they'll do it on the final day, and they'll then track their riders' hemoglobin mass gains, so to speak, from that altitude camp, and be able to assess whether that camp worked or not, and perhaps then make decisions about future camps from there for specific riders. Where the problem comes in is that scientific research is now emerging that shows that a higher dosage and a higher frequency of carbon monoxide inhalation may elicit performance-enhancing gains. And the problem is that with the history this sport has, and with some of the individuals still involved in this sport, the difference between the measurement and the performance-enhancing methods is simply down to frequency and volume. And with that, you have plausible deniability. Should anyone ever be caught with canisters of carbon monoxide in their car, they could just say, I'm going to altitude and I'm going to do a test at the beginning and the end. You do need a heck of a lot more of equipment to do the test, and that you can't just do this test.
Yeah, you don't just fill a room with carbon monoxide. That's
yes, that is a shortcut.
Bad way to do it.
To death. Yes. And so, with some of the things that pro cyclists and pro cycling teams have tried in the past, the fact that currently carbon monoxide is neither a banned substance, which would be very difficult to ban because it is kind of everywhere these days, nor a prohibited method, is where the difficulties lie for WADA, for UCI, and for pro cycling at the moment.
So the reason why we bring this up is not just out of the blue. There's some small updates here that we just wanted to pass along. So the first one is that the MPCC, the Movement for Credible Cycling, which seems to be sort of a slowly shrinking group that's mostly down to just some French teams these days. I think EF and some other ones are still in there, but they have been losing teams over the years, mostly, to be honest, because they take this very sort of hardline stand against pretty much anything that could be performance enhancing, right? So they're anti-ketone. They're things that teams are using pretty regularly that aren't banned, right? And so
also are always definitely performance enhancers. Like there's
they are always and like there's potentially not performance enhancing, right? Anyway, the MPCC came out in the last couple weeks and said that they do not agree with the use of carbon monoxide, and kind of called on the powers that be to do something about it. And the other person that came out, I shouldn't say came out about this, he was asked about it, was Roman Bardet, who had sort of similar things to say, which is that, can I read the quote from him? Because the quote is just...
I mean, if you can explain it, that would also help.
Only
Right.
French riders can speak like this.
No. Only Roman Bardet and
Guillaume Martin.
Guillaume Martin,
Guillaume Martin.
who are
Yeah.
trying to outdo each other with phrases.
This gives me
this.
like you. It feels like you're reading quotes from somebody involved in the French Revolution. You know?
Yeah, or the American Declaration of Independence.
Yes, that era. Anyway, let me read the quote. So the quote from Roman Bardet: "It is the intimate conviction of each person to place the threshold of what seems ethical fair in the absolute and desperate search for the final result in relation to their values." It's good stuff.
Is another way of saying like,
that's good stuff. Yeah, well, but basically, what he was saying that he has no proof that anybody is using carbon monoxide, but he has certainly seen the story, probably read our story. We know that he reads Escape, and that he absolutely sort of doesn't trust humanity at large, and that people need to draw the line for themselves. I think it's an interesting sort of return to this storyline, because part of the reason we wrote the story over the summer was to try to push things out into the open, right? And then at least have the conversation within the sport. And that does seem to be happening a little bit. We heard about a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I think that ended up just being mostly among MPCC teams, but at least some of the teams are discussing this topic and trying to figure out what the sport should do about it.
Well, and I'm sure that some of the teams found out about this and then were like, we should maybe be doing this in terms of the testing. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there's definitely when we were chatting to some teams about it, the impression we got was that, this is actually a good idea, and this explains maybe why the teams that are doing it have been able to achieve the performance they have. I mean, Ronan, how much have you've constantly been sort of chipping away at this topic, this subject? Is there any new things that you can share with us that you've heard, or any sort of changes in how people are discussing it?
Probably nothing that I can share at the moment publicly. Yeah. Well, no, it's not intended that way, but just I think conversations like this, you need to be very careful around what you say, and you need to be very careful around what you I'll leave it there. But I think the big change is just that it is now a topic of conversation. And when it's not a topic of conversation, when it's a secret thing, or when it's just something that not very many people know about, then the chances of the temptation of the performance enhancing element of this being too tempting for some to resist is just that little bit. It's just that higher chance that some might consider doing that. Whereas when it's something that everybody knows about and suddenly everybody's guard is up against, I'm not saying that that's going to make it's going to make enough of a difference, but it certainly, I think it increases the threshold for which some less dubious individuals, of which there will be in every sport, and there always has been and always will be. I'm starting to sound a bit like Bardet here. I'm talking in circles, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. So there's one more, I guess, like little news item to go along with this. So we had a Bardet speaking about it. We had the MPCC putting their thoughts about it out into the world. We also then Cycling News reached out to Karsten Lundby, who's the guy that runs Detallo, the company that makes the machine, right? And we should, in for fairness' sake, mention the fact that he still very much stands by the machine he's got and the measurement technique that is being used, right? It is as you said at the start, Ronan, it's a commonly used measurement technique. If used properly, it is nothing dangerous. He also says that Detallo has the ability to monitor the use of their machines in real time, so they would be able to see if there was any abuse happening. So all that is also relevant context for all this.
I think when we say his machine, it makes it sound a little bit sinister. Specifically, the Detallo device that Karsten Lundby has developed is used for the measurement, the legitimate measurement purposes. There's nothing to suggest that is or can be used for the performance enhancing alternative method, let's call it. And as you said, and as we reported in July, the Tallow device live tracks how it's being used, and so sirens or red flags or something would be going off for Lundby, who himself, is staunch anti-doping advocate, has been for a long time.
He wrote kind of an open letter warning against the abuse of this.
When we reached out to him, during the tour, he was back within minutes. He with an open letter that he had already sent, in which he's already calling out the potential that the performance enhancing could happen, not with his device, but he was concerned that with emerging scientific research, there could be temptation for athletes, teams, and not specific. I don't think he was speaking specifically about cycling. I think he was speaking more generally about sport.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like the fact that his machine kind of live tracks what's going on is I think a huge benefit. At the same time, and I'm not saying that this is just an argument that he's making. It's an argument that you mentioned at the start that a lot of people sort of within physiology circles, within sports science circles, are saying, oh, it's just it's a medical test. It's legitimate use. I don't buy that at all, right? I think that's actually not relevant in any way, because you know what else has legitimate medical uses?
EPO?
Yeah.
Orange juice?
Yeah. Like EPO has legitimate medical uses. That's where it came from. And the very fact that it has a legitimate medical use is not in any way relevant to its abuse or potential abuse, right? And so that, as an argument that gets trotted out, is just useless, right? It is not in any way relevant to what we are discussing. So anyway, we don't want to spend too much more time on this. We just wanted to sort of update everybody on where it's at and the conversation that is sort of starting to happen around this. We wouldn't have written that story if we didn't have concerns over the abuse of carbon monoxide within professional sport, right? And I think that those concerns are well-founded. I also really appreciate people like Karsten Lundby sort of standing up for the legitimate use of this, and also for simple things like making it so he can track what's going on with his devices. That, again, that's a huge benefit, but it's something that we will continue to keep an eye on.